Shabbat Shalom, Mishpacha. This is Rabbi Simon. Here we are at another Sabbath. So, lots of things going on in America and around the world. Mainly, as you can probably hear the news, you probably hear a lot about tariffs that Mr. Trump is imposing or asking other countries to pay. There's also a war going on in the Middle East. There's talk about peace in Ukraine and Russian war. All of these things are going on. One side there's wars, other side there's peace, and perhaps the way things are looking, perhaps we might see peace between Russia and Ukraine potentially happening. That is in the cards from what is the discussions over here in the US. Okay, so that's basically the headlines around this part of the world. I think let's get on with the lecture, and I want to look at John chapter 9, and I want to look at just a recap on last week's lecture a little bit as well. John chapter 9 is a very good and interesting chapter. In this, Yeshua Jesus, he heals a blind man, and this is a conversation that happens in chapter 9. Now as Yeshua passed by, he saw a man who was blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Yeshua answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of Elohim should be revealed in him. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work, and as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Or Alam Haba. When he had said these things, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with this clay, and he said to him, Go wash in the pool of Siloam. So he went and washed and came back seeing. Therefore the neighbors and those who previously had seen that he was blind said, Is not this the one who sat and begged? Some said, This is he. Others said, He is like him. And he said, I am he. Therefore they said to him, How were your eyes opened? He answered and said, A man called Yeshua made clay and anointed my eyes and said to me, Go to the pool of Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and I received sight. Then they said to him, Where is he? He said, I do not know. They brought him who formerly was blind to the Parashim, through the Pharisees. Now it was a Shabbat, Sabbath day, when Yeshua made the clay and opened his eyes. Then the Parashim, the Pharisees, also asked him again how he had received his sight. He said to them, He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and I see. Therefore some of the Parashim, the Pharisees, said, This man is not from Elohim, because he does not keep the Shabbat. Others said, How can a man who is a sinner do such signs? And there was division among them. They said to the blind man again, What do you say about him, because he opened your eyes? He said, He is a Navi, he is a prophet. But the Yehudim did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight, until they called the parents of him who had received his sight, and they asked them, saying, Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? His parents answered them and said, We know this is our son, that he was born blind. But by what means he now sees, we do not know, or who opened his eyes, we do not know. He is of age, ask him. He will speak for himself. His parents said these things because they feared the Yehudim. For the Yehudim had agreed already that if anybody confessed that he was the Messiah, he would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, He is of age, ask him. So they again called the man who was blind, and said to him, Give Elohim the glory. We know that this man is a sinner. He answered and said, Whether he is a sinner or not, I do not know. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see. Then they said to him again, What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered them, I told you already, you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples? Then they reviled him and said, You are his disciple, but we are Moshe's disciples, Moses' disciples. We know that Elohim spoke to Moshe. As for this fellow, we do not know where he is from. The man answered and said to them, Why, this is a marvelous thing, that you do not know where he is from, yet he opened my eyes. Now we know that Elohim does not hear sinners, but if anyone is a worshipper of Elohim and does his will, he hears him. Since the world began, it has been unheard of that anyone opened the eyes of one who was born blind. If this man were not from Elohim, he could do nothing. They answered and said to him, You were completely born in sins, and are you teaching us? And they cast him out. Yeshua heard that they had cast him out, and when he had found him, he said to him, Do you believe in the Son of Elohim? He answered and said, Do you believe in Ben Elohim? He answered and said, Who is he? Adonai, that I may believe in him. And Yeshua said to him, You have both seen him, and it is he who is talking with you. Then he said, Adonai, I believe. And he worshipped him. And Yeshua said, For judgment I have come into this world, that those who do not see may see, and that those who see may be made blind. And some of the Prashim, the Pharisees who were with him, heard these words and said to him, Are we blind also? Yeshua said to them, If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you say, We see, therefore your sin remains. A very interesting chapter about a particular person who Yeshua healed. Now, question is that, was it the clay? What Jesus did, he took some clay from the floor, from the earth, and he put his saliva, he spit in there, he mixed it, and he put it on the man's eyes. Now, is it the clay that healed him? Then he told the man to go and wash in the pool of Siloam, like a local reservoir, local spring nearby. Now, the question remains, is it the clay and the spit that healed him? Or was it the fact that the man was obedient that healed him? Today I'll tell you one thing. It wasn't the clay, and it wasn't the fact that Jesus mixed his spit into the clay that healed him. It was the man's obedience. Simply this, that the man was willing to listen to Jesus and do as he told him. That is what healed him. Unfortunately, often what happens is we focus on the works of somebody else, and we think that he is doing some kind of magic, he must have some magic in his hand. And sure, it's not that Jesus didn't have the power. He did have the power, but his power would only work in this man if he was obedient. We may have often read the passage in the Bible, that you may have often heard it, obedience is better than sacrifice. It was the prophet Samuel that said obedience is better than sacrifice. God values obedience and a heart that trusts and follows in him more than outward acts of sacrifice. This is, from the book of Samuel, chapter 1, verse 15. So here, again, Jesus is demonstrating that it was the obedience factor that is what brought the healing of this man. The man was obedient. There was no way, by any science, scientifically speaking, there is no science that could heal this man. Even today we don't have such science that could heal a man born blind. There's no science that can heal this man. There's no magic that can heal a man like this. No science and no magic can heal blindness from a man who is born blind and grown up as an adult, and yet Jesus comes on the scene and heals him. Because that's one of the things that the Messiah would do. The Messiah would raise the dead. The Messiah would heal the blind. The Messiah would remove leprosy from those who were lepers. These were the signs of the Messiah. That's why these Pharisees, they ask him, they say to him, what the man thought about this man who healed him. And he turned around and said he's a prophet. And of course he believed he's a Messiah as well. But the Pharisees wanted to hear no such thing. That's like government. That's like, authority. Authority wants to hear nothing about miracles, nothing about God. Authorities, majority of the time, people in authority, they want to deny God. They don't want to believe in God. They want to deny Him. This is why I say to you, and I ask you to do certain things, certain acts, and the acts reveal your obedience. It is in the acts that you do that you get the blessing. The blessing is always attached to the act. And sure, I can, use my power, so to say. I can use the power given to me through God, that I can help you, but it is the act that you do. I give you the instructions, you do the act, and you benefit. Last week, we spoke about the moon. We spoke about many things that the moon can help you with. So here is something for you this week, a little gem. And I'll give you a little testimony behind this as well. Many years ago, my younger brother, he was working for a bank as a cashier. And his salary was very mediocre. It wasn't on a good salary, very mediocre salary in those days. He was working for Santander Bank. It didn't used to be always called Santander, by the way. It used to be called by a different name before that. Santander is a Spanish bank. They bought this previous bank out, and then they renamed that bank. So it was called by a different name before that. If you know the history of these banks in UK High Street that are now known as Santander, before they used to be known by a different name. Anyhow, so what happened, he used to be working for a bank like that, and he had a very mediocre salary. And one day I gave him a tape, the cassette tape days. You remember those cassettes that we used to run in our little players before the advent of MP3 and CD technology? So I gave him a cassette and I said to him, listen to this every day. And it had C sounds in it. And he said to me, are you telling me that I'm going to become wealthy by listening to these C sounds? And here's the interesting part. Yes, there were C sounds, but my brother at the time didn't own a home, didn't own a car. He lived on rent by himself. He wasn't married at the time. So I said to him, listen to it. You will become rich with this. And he did. He laughed. I said, I jokingly said to him, don't laugh. You will become rich. Now, tell me, years later, my brother's life transpired. He became rich. He now owned 2 cars. He had 2 houses. He had a beautiful house, very expensive house, and living in England. And so, what was it? Now tell me, just like Jesus healed the blind man, what was it? Was it the obedience that made him rich? Or was it the C sounds that made him rich? Well, it's debatable. But let me give you something. I believe it was the obedience that made him rich. And of course, the C sounds have their power, but without obedience, they would have no power. So, what you are supposed to do, what you should do, is you should get some C sounds. Now, get the C sound for nighttime C, not the daytime C, okay? You could probably find them on the internet, and maybe a lot of these videos on the internet, you can't download them because they're locked or whatever. But what you might want to do is in a quiet room, you want to maybe record 5 minutes of that sound, about 5 minutes. And then what you want to do is that 5-minute sound, you can save it in your phone, or in a phone recorder, or whatever application you use. You can use Audacity on the laptop, which is free. Audacity, you can download it and then record it in there, and then you can save it as an MP3 file. You can save it as a 128-bit MP3, or there's a value in there that says compressed and best fastest save, something like that. There's a option in there that it makes the file not too big, and also makes it saves it quicker. And it's 40 or 48 or over 48 bits per second. So you save the file. Now what you do is you listen to that file every day, and best even you put that file on your by your bed, or somewhere where you're not far away from your bed. The phone can be somewhere there, or your laptop, and then you just play it. Or you can copy it into an MP3 player and put it in an MP3 player and play it. And you play it at night when you go to bed, and loop it. Just loop it, let it loop. By the way, that was a method that made my brother rich. And I believe that can do it for you too. But you got to do it with what I just told you. Get the evening, the sea waves after sunset, because they will have the energy of the moon in there. And the energy of the moon draws out abundance, wealth, prosperity. It's linked to all of that, and you will benefit from that. A while back I told you to wear, if you remember, I told you that you can wear a silver bracelet or a silver necklace chain, like a chain, or a silver ring. And I don't know how many people took notice of that, but if you do, even today, the instructions are the same. If you wear a silver bracelet, if you wear a silver ring, you can put it in your thumb, or you can put it in one of your other fingers, or a silver bangle type thing. If you wear that, what that will do, that will strengthen the moon symbol in your birth chart. So what that means, if it strengthens the moon, then in the Indian tradition it's called Chandrama or Chandramata. So Chandrama meaning the moon, and the energy of the moon, it will strengthen it. When the moon's energy is strengthened, then it will also strengthen your prosperity side, your health side. Not just prosperity, health and life, long life. So these are the things that you do to help yourself. So it's not hard. You do not have to spend any money at taking down a little clip, or the sound of a clip from internet. It's going to cost you nothing to take the sound of a clip from the internet, and then you're going to save it for 5 minutes on your phone or on your laptop, and then you're just going to play it. How much is it going to cost you? All it's going to cost you is time. But if you do that, if you follow this method, you could have a change of life. But by the way, this method is not to be taken lightly, and is not to be done only for 1 or 2 days. You are to live with that method. It needs to be done every day. The recording you're supposed to listen to every day. Even if you just, if you said, at night time I'm having hard time sleeping, we shouldn't do with sea waves. You can put them on low volume, or you can do this. You can, in the daytime while you're working, some of you might be driving, some of you might be working in the home, you can just play it in the background while you do your work. It's playing in the background. No problem. Play it for a couple of hours. I'm not saying you play it for all day, and I'm not saying play it for all night. If you want to, you listen to it for 1 to 2 hours, and you can switch it off. If you want to do it that way, that's fine. You can do it 1 to 2 hours in the daytime and then switch it off. Then just do the same the next day. So that is one sure way of opening up the gates of abundance into your life. Now, what will do it? Will obedience do it, or will the actual moon do it? Now, I leave that to you to decide. But obedience is better than sacrifice. and there is life and prosperity for those who are obedient. So coming back to the story of Yeshua, Jesus simply demonstrated the power of obedience. Jesus could do any miracle in his time, and he did many miracles. But the idea of the miracle wasn't to prove Jesus is a Messiah or not the Messiah, or he's a prophet or not the prophet. He wasn't interested in that. What he was interested in was to demonstrate that those that are obedient to my calling, those that are obedient to my voice, are the ones who are going to benefit. It is always the case. Always the case. The students who are obedient to their teachers, to the rabbis, to the pastors out there, to the students that are obedient to them, usually the ones that benefit. Usually are the ones to benefit. So I would suggest the same thing, and no less than that, is that you become obedient. And obedience brings you success. Obedience brings you success. In the book of Genesis, in chapter 3, we see God said, "V'yomer Elohim yihi or." So, and Elohim said, or God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Or God said, "Be light," and light was. V'yomer Elohim yihi or. So, what does that mean? God commanded light. God didn't say, "Oh, you can decide for yourself if you want to be light or if you want to be darkness. You can decide." No, God issued a command, and the command was immediately obeyed. And so the light is really a demonstration of what? Obedience to God. The light is a demonstration of obedience to God. This is why Jesus is saying that I am the light of the world. How is he the light of the world? Because Jesus demonstrated obedience to the Father. He also was obedient, and he demonstrated it. Are you obedient? I have found in my walks in this faith of Torah and Yeshua, I found that many people have come through. Many people have come through, and many of them have fallen apart and disappeared. Why? Because they were disobedient. Disobedient ones don't last, but there are the obedient ones, they last. And the obedient ones, they benefit too. There are the obedient ones that benefit, and there are the disobedient ones that disappear. I have obedient students. They are still with me. Many years later, they're still with me. And they will benefit greatly. Sure, they may go through challenging times, but that doesn't mean that they are disobedient, that they're just going to disappear. They will continue to benefit. God brings you through a challenging time, not to destroy you, but to challenge you, to show you that God is still with you. And he takes you out, and though, it might seem that, hey, things are not working out for me, or things are down, what do? You just remain obedient. That's what you do. Be obedient. Be obedient to the call of God. Don't ever be disobedient. I have so many times said to my students that they should be tithing from their income that they receive. But my students, often some of them have been very obedient. They have done the right thing, and others didn't care. They just continue to flounder. They continue to disobey, and they can either they don't do no tithing, or if they do tithing and sadaqah, what they do, they only do a partial amount. They never do the full amount, 10% or 20%, 20% including sadaqah, but 10% if you just do tithing. I found that most of my students didn't do that. And those are the students that fell away. Those are the students that went into hardship, and those are the students that went to the earth. Sadly, I have to declare that today. And like I said, there are challenges. I'm not saying that all of the students that were with me, they all, had a luxury life all the time. No, some of them, of course, they went through challenges. They had jobs up and down, jobs situation up and down. They lost jobs and they gained jobs. They had, problems in their marriages, but then their marriages were sorted out as well. Problems don't mean that the end of the marriage. They had problems in their marriage, and those that listened, they kept their wives, and those that didn't listen, they lost their wives. There was a student, and I don't want to name names, and even though I said to that student that don't force his wife to, sit down and listen to this Torah, and but he carried on doing that. Every day he would carry on forcing his wife to sit down and listen to him read the Bible and try to explain it. Well, his wife wasn't interested. She was probably more interested in other things, like maybe, she wanted to go to the church and hear a Sunday sermon, like a, 15-minute sermon that they're used to. But he didn't allow that to happen. Even in spite of me telling him, don't force this on your wife. He didn't listen. And you know what happened? He lost that wife. So a lot of the times, majority of the times, the students that I saw with problems down the road were those that were disobedient. They didn't listen to my voice. But if you don't listen to my voice, and if God's going to speak through me, and it's God's voice, then you disobeyed God. And you will suffer the penalty for that. And I don't want you to suffer the penalty. But if you don't obey, what can I do? I can only pray for you, but I can't force you. So please, spare yourself. Listen to what I say. As I've said to you many times, make sure that you tithe the correct tithe. Because what you spend, what you give to God, God will return back to you 10 times. But when you send it, you also say, as I send this forth, it may return to me 10 times, multiplied. That's what you're supposed to say as well. That as I send this forth and I give to God, then you can say Lord, you can say God, you can say Elohim. As I send this forth and give to God, may this return to me multiplied 10 times. And God will multiply it. If you give $100, God will multiply it to 1,000. God will bless you out of somewhere with $1,000. If you send $200, God will multiply it 2 times 10, $2,000. If you give $1,000, He'll multiply it times 10, $10,000. God will do that. Believe me, God will do that. I have seen this happen. Those that have been obedient to the call of God, they have received times 10. Some of them even more than 10. One of my students, he's a obedient student, and he was very obedient, and he would, give his tithes and sadaqah, and God blessed him. He came into, I don't know the exact amount, but he came into something like $400,000 of wealth. $400,000 of wealth. Think about it. Just from obedience. Just from obedience, he came into $400,000. Another student of mine who was obedient, and whatever salary he was earning, he would take out his 10 to 20% and he would give it, and he came into $300,000 of wealth. Now I can't say that about those students that said, they're making $2,000 a month, and their tithe is, let's say out of the 2,000, let's say their tithe is $200, 10%. And Zadaqah is $200, $400, okay? So let's just say at minimum you have $200. At above that you have $400. And if you give a little bit more than that, maybe a little bit more, maybe $500 or $600. Let's just say $500. You decided to take $500 out and give it to God. Now, what is the result of that? Now you multiply that 500 times 10. That's $5,000. I have students who have received that. Yes, I'm telling you. I have students who tithe and have received it. One of my students, that she was giving the tithes regularly, God blessed her with $5,000. It was about times 10 of what she was giving. So I'm not making this up. I'm telling you what it is. But if you are going to be, if you're going to be stingy with God, then God will take it away from you. Well, God doesn't have to take it away from you. Caesar will take it from you. Caesar will come and take it away. Remember what I said last week? Remember what I said last week. And I'm not speaking to my obedient students. I'm speaking to those students who are not obedient, who don't care, who I have to tell, and they still do the wrong thing. If you don't give to God what belongs to Him, then Caesar takes by force. And a lot of you have experienced that. A lot of you are dealing with, IRS chasing you. A lot of you dealing with cases against you. Why? Because you did not give to God what belonged to Him. Now you're wondering, well, what happened to me? Well, you go and fix yourself. Go and fix yourself, and the things will reverse. If you want to have a private conversation with me, by all means you can have a private conversation with me. I'll put you in the right track. I'll tell you what you need to do to fix your situation, and your situation will be fixed. Caesar will not take away anything from you after that. But you've got to be obedient. And again, like I said, I'm not speaking to my obedient students. This is not for my obedient students. This is for those that have been disobedient and have not obeyed God, and have tried to, cut corners and shorten corners. It's for those people. If you're an obedient student, this does not apply to you. Okay, I keep saying that. Why? Because the obedient students do go through challenges. There will be times when you go through challenges. That does not mean that God has betrayed you or discarded you. No, God will never discard you. God will never betray you. God will never forsake you. God is not into the forsaking business. Even the disobedient ones, God hasn't forsaken. Even they have opportunity to return, repent, and do the right thing. Even they have the opportunity to do that. So it's very important. The verse in Genesis, verse 4, is the Hebrew letter Dalit, and it says, "And God saw the light, Vira Elohim at Haor." Vira Elohim at Haor, and God saw the light. Kitov, that it was good. And then what does God do after that? He divided the light from the darkness. That has the letter Dalit. What is the Dalit? The Dalit represents the door. And Jesus many times said what? I am the door. I am the way. If Jesus is the door and God is the door, and what happens to those that are disobedient? They are thrown outside. The door is shut for them. And those that are obedient, the door is open for them. That's why Jesus also says, knock on the door, and it shall be opened. So even if you've been disobedient in the past, and now you realize your mistake, you have a chance to repent and return. So I always say there is esoteric meanings behind passages in the Bible, hidden and esoteric meanings. But you got to understand, you got to have a teacher to explain those things. This verse 4, the Dalit is a door. It's a door for the righteous people. The righteous men and women will remain inside. The door will always be open for them. But the unrighteous, the door will be shut. They'll be thrown out. This is why it says God divided the light from the darkness. Well, what is the light? The righteous people. What is darkness? The unrighteous people. They're removed. Unrighteous are put out of the camp. So don't be in that camp. Don't be in that camp. Fix your ways. There's always room for blessing. Coming back now to the moon, as I said, I gave you two methodologies, two tools. One is to record the moon's, sea waves under the moon, and the second is to wear either a ring or a chain made of silver. Got to be pure silver though. Don't get fake imitations. Make sure it's silver and it's pure silver. If you can do that, you can help yourself. But also fix your obedience. Be obedient, and God will reward you for that. It's very simple. God rewards the obedient people. He doesn't care about the disobedient. They are thrown to one side and left. The door is shut on them. So don't have God shut the door upon yourself. be obedient, and whatever you ask God, whatever your needs are, God is able to meet them. This is why I said that if you want a consultation with me, private consultation, by all means you can give me your number, telephone number. I can call you. I'm in the US, I can call you if you're in the US. If you're in the UK, we could maybe do a WhatsApp or something. Or if you're in Canada or somewhere else, we could do a WhatsApp. I can call to Canada as well. Calling Canada isn't a problem. But if you are in the US, is no problem. I can call you. If it's email you want, we can discuss it on email. I can help you to put you on the right path. But you got to be obedient. This calling is only for the obedient. And if you don't want to be obedient, then there's no need for me to talk to you or for you to talk to me. You carry on being what you are, and you are seeing the results of that. So with that, I'm going to say this, that with the power of the moon, because we just had the eclipse a few days ago, it was very powerful, by the way, and some of you might have seen a red blood moon. For at least 2 days, 2 nights, the moon was almost reddish, reddish hue in it. So it was very powerful. And if you live near the sea, if you live by the sea and you're able to collect sea sounds at night, they are even better for you. Go to the beach, collect the sea sounds at night, save them on your phone for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then you can play them back to yourself during the day. They will work very, very powerfully for you. Very, very powerfully. So I leave that with you. I wish you the best. I wish you a happy Sabbath. And until next time. By the way, our Passover is in April. So some people were asking about Passover. April 3rd, by the way, is a Passover date. So mark that in your calendars, April 3rd. And so other than that, have a wonderful Sabbath and a wonderful time with your families. May God bless you, keep you, and the Lord Jesus be with you and uplift you. Shalom, shalom to you, and Shabbat shalom to you.